Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another Final Fantasy BFX video. We're going to be talking about some stuff here in terms of units from Final Fantasy BFX US Global, and I've got a guest with me, Sinzar.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for inviting me, Deus.
So, there's a lot of units now, as you can see on the page. There's a lot of units that have morale abilities, but, some of them are really good, and, maybe some of them are not so good, so that's what we're going to be talking about here. So the first one we've got is King Behemi. What do you think about him?
As far as tanking goes, he's pretty good. He did have his global upgrades a few months back that, fixed a few of his problems, gave him the current day levels of most tanks have for mitigation. He's got some decent support stuff. That being said, I'm not so sure about him as a morale unit because while he does have a couple things for morale, he counters for it. He doesn't bring as much as someone like Maeve does, who can use her on-demand morale every turn, and she has just more killers, more mitigations for the party, etc. So I'd say he's still good, he's still usable, but probably not the best option. Not to mention, as far as pure bulk goes, Runda is just a little stronger for physical tanking.
Do you think that you still be able to use him for level 99 clears and stuff for a little while?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Just for clearing, and not really worrying about that rank one. He's definitely very good, and he does have the really cool stuff like King's Barrier for the resistance, and he has the status immunity and all that, which can be very, very helpful and slot efficient for a newer player that doesn't have all the options for supports.
So what do you think about maybe 6 months down the road? Are we gonna even remember where he exists?
I'd say probably not, because the player that's listening to this video now and has been playing for 6 more months, I would assume that by then they've pulled for someone probably a little bit more useful, unless maybe he gets an intrinsic ability, which could certainly change things. But until that happens, I'd say probably not.
We should probably go over what an intrinsic ability is.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and explain it for us? Yeah, it was just introduced on the anniversary stream.
So an intrinsic ability is, I think it's an equip. It sounds like an equip. So it's probably gonna be like a materia, and you equip it and you get a lot of stuff. So for example, Louise is getting one. It's insane. She's getting 80% magic, so basically she's pretty much going to be capped on magic, so you don't got to worry about that anymore. And she gets 2,000 flat magic on top of a mod buff for her LB. We don't know what it is yet, but it's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good one. On the other hand, I think Mazurka's is just, in my opinion, I think Mazurka's is just okay. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. For Mazurka, it really depends on the extent of the mod boost for her skills, which I assume means her jump. If they buff her jump to relevancy, like Kane and all those guys, she could see some use. I'm assuming she's not going to be on the top tier like Kane and such, but hopefully she's good. But that really all comes down to the data mine of that percentage mod boost, or not percent, how much it is.
So if King Behemi got an intrinsic ability, what should he need?
If I was going to assume what they would do for support or tanks, it probably would be less about buffing their numbers and maybe more about giving them some active skills, or maybe some passive auto buffing, something like maybe he can auto cast morale fill per turn while he's alive and not disabled. Something like that could give him could fix some of his problems, because as far as tanking goes, he's fine. He doesn't really need any help in just tanking. The problem is he doesn't really do a ton beyond that could really help the party. So someone compared to Chow, who is a magical tank, but the reason you bring Chow is not because he's a great tank. You bring him because he's a good enough tank while also just spamming that morale gauge. So something to bring Behemi to that at least better version of, maybe not better than Chow, but something better than he currently is. An intrinsic ability like that could really make him very, very useful.
Say for example, they gave him 99% mitigation for maybe 1 or 2 turns, but you can use it for a few for a few times, like a Grandis, maybe 3 times.
Mm-hmm. That would actually be really good, especially if there's a clash boss that maybe does a really big power up move on say only on turn 4 or something. Then yeah, that could be really helpful.
And of course, hopefully they would make it so you could actually use it with his triple cast. I hate those things that you can only do a single cast with. It's it seems like a waste of a turn a lot of the time.
For sure, definitely.
All right, so now we have Cacteria, and she already had some buffs. And I still think she's pretty good because the single target breaks are insanely good still. But in terms of Clash of Wills, what do you think about her?
As far as breaking, yeah, she's great for breaking. And she did get the update to her kit that gave her the morale skills. And even now, with the updates to variants and magical variants, if you force double hand on her, like maybe you pulled Hadlar's STMR, or maybe you're using like a double handed sword like Freebie or something, even with that, her damage is still pretty far behind. So as is, unless you just don't have a better breaker, I probably wouldn't recommend her. But again, intrinsic abilities are just the thing we're looking for to maybe fix her in the future. And for her, um, an intrinsic ability that I would recommend is just damage. Like again, she's totally fine as a breaker. She got those 89% on the one-time use skill. She's got 87% permanent. Got really good fist in peril. That kind of stuff is great, but that's like, compared to someone like, Kaito, who can do that plus so much more, it's hard to give her a slot. So if intrinsic abilities gave her relevant damage, then yeah, but at that point we're kind of speculating.
It'd be nice if she got like a non-elemental imbuable magic attack, for example, because she's stuck with basically the water and earth attacks.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So in terms of maybe like 6 months down the road, are we going to remember Cacteria existing?
To be honest, probably not. And I would say that even today, we're probably at the not really phase. It's unfortunate. I like her a lot.
All right. Next one, I think this one's not going to be too much contested here with Nappy. And Nappy already got a rework as well, around the same time as Cacteria did. And what do you think about Nappy?
As cute as she is, I love Nappy as a unit. This is probably, in my opinion, the weakest of the revamps. It's kind of funny because it fixed a bunch of her problems, but at the same time, they didn't fix them enough. So it gave her a weapon in peril, it gave her a big amplify, it gave her a smoother rotation, morale scaling. But all of those, the tuning was just so low on the numbers, and the damage is just not there. And as a primary damage dealer, that is just unacceptable. So unfortunately, without something to save her in the future, I think she's kind of already on the bench.
And unfortunately, she's stuck to Earth. She's basically fixed to Earth where LB is, and I don't like that. I don't like that too much. So in terms of intrinsic ability, I think that she just needs some damage.
Damage modifiers, absolutely, yeah. So give her an intrinsic with a passive that just to make up a number, 500x per cast on her abilities. I'm just making up a number. I have no idea how balanced that is without doing math. But she needs something. She definitely just needs also flat attack. Nappy's attack power is exceptionally low for today's meta. Yeah, she's like at like 5,000 in like the really high end gear. So that is just too low. Needs some flat attack and some modifiers.
On my main account, I have an EX3 Nappy, and I have to try my best to even like basically get 5,000 at EX3. So she needs some flat attack. She needs those EX abilities. And I don't think I really need to ask what's going to happen to her 6 months down the road. I still people don't think she exists, so I don't think we need to worry too much about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's someone who's actually getting a buff pretty soon, Louise. So I think she's still pretty useful because of all the things that she can do. Like she does so many things even now that I think she's still not complete mainstay, like an instant slot in for Clash of Wills, but every now and then she has something that you would like to have, like the killer buff and things like that.
For sure. Louise is still being used today. I'd say she's not quite as popular on like the best of the best rank 1 teams anymore, but she still shows up every now and then on a rank 1 team. And she was designed so well from the original day one. It has stood the test of time for an entire year, where her kit is still pretty relevant. Now, as far as damage dealing goes, that has not aged well. Her damage is very low today, and she could be almost classified as a pure support unit. But she does bring so much good support that that alone is still enough to bring her. And as you mentioned a moment ago, she is confirmed to be getting intrinsic abilities. And unfortunately, we don't know the modifier yet, but depending on how big, that could be exactly what she needs to like wake up from this, slowly falling asleep and slowly fading away from our teams, maybe it could bring her back.
So what I was thinking, maybe give her a 120 start with, 120 start mod, and then you can work your way up with a. Hopefully, she gets a morale based LB there instead of just a flat, just stacking. So maybe it'd be like 300, or maybe more than that, with morale ability of level 100%. And hopefully, also since her LB is being changed, hopefully her modifier boosts for the 5 turns there is also increased to maybe like 50 times, 60 times. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that could definitely help her, and that would also help her in content outside of Clash as well, which would just overall make her just a better unit in general. So as like the flagship anniversary unit from 2021, I certainly hope that she gets all of this and maybe more.
Agreed. And now we have White Dragon Ling, and I still use her a whole lot. I know she's kind of started to show her age because she doesn't have any EX abilities. She doesn't have the EX2 ability where she gets her LB field at the start, because that would be really amazing if she had that. That would be access to a lot of turn 1 strats. But what do you think about Ling nowadays?
Yeah, she also is one of the other anniversary units from last year, and same as Louise, she has still stood the test of time. She's very useful. She still has 150 to 4 killers. The most common reason I use her these days is when I need like a renewable source of Mirage plus other things, because she can do 2-stack Mirage on demand, 4-stack on cooldown. I think either 4 or 5-stack on LB. I forget exactly how much. But yeah, she is incredible for Mirage type stuff. And she 5 stacks, yeah. So that is our highest Mirage in the game, other than Zahn's Smoke Bomb, which is a headache to use. So that yeah, she's really good. I'd say it's very possible that we could still see her being used in 6 months. It's hard to creep her kit because it does everything so well and it does
Yeah.
so many things on a meta level. So yeah, I think she'll still be useful in the future.
And for the buff that she may receive in the future?
I would say maybe increase the amplifies, because they're only 25%, and that is a little low for today's meta. I'd say at a minimum bring them to like 35% or preferably 45, like Roberta, Freebie, etc. So intrinsics to buff that, maybe buff the killers to 200%, because now that we're getting things like Ilmatil and other upcoming units that are doing 250, buffing an old unit to do 200, I don't think is out of the question. So those would be some great changes for in the future.
And hopefully she also gets the EX buffs that all the other units have been getting. Unfortunately, she came out before a lot of units started getting those. So
yes, starting with a full LB gauge would make her a lot less of a headache to use on turn 1.
For sure, that's what I'm looking forward to, for sure. All right, and we have someone who's still used, at least most people are still using her today, Skye. And while her base form isn't really very useful, most times you have to stay in the base form so she can fill her LB gauge. How can we fix her base form, for example?
I would say if you wanted to fix her base form, I would say increase the modifiers on her chaining. That way you can give her like a relevant thing to do in the base form. You can make the base form like the chainer, and then the shift form the burster with the LB or maybe jump. But yeah, Sky's the one that's hard to recommend any kind of buffs for, because even today she is still at the top of the hill with like 1 or 2 other units, and she is incredibly powerful. She started off with at max morale power. I think it's a 705x modifier after all stacks, and then you use things like Tyvus' Spirit, which double dip on Skye to make her even better. And yeah, she does like a 765 LB in Clash of Wills, and that is to this day one of our highest sources of damage in the game. So I think she definitely is probably going to get power crept within 6 months, but because she's already so high, I think she's just going to move down to like maybe 3rd or 4th DPS in your team instead of 1st DPS. So I think she's still very likely to be useful in the future as well.
And for intrinsic buff, what do you think that she needs?
Definitely not more modifier. I think her modifiers are totally fine. I'd say just flat attack. The one weakness of Skye is her attack power is very low. She has basically no sources of flat attack other than external sources like cards or Clash of Wills gear.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah.
same thing like with Napi. Napi at even at EX3, and also Skye even at EX3. Her attack is kind of pathetic, so kind of her modifiers kind of make up for the low attack points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Here's someone who I don't think many people talk about not or Yigni anymore, but we are. So Napi can do quite a few things, kind of overlooked because a lot of other units can kind of do almost the same thing that Yigni can do. So what do you think about Yigni?
Yigni is a unit for a very long time, which is on the bench because not that great. But just recently, with the Magic Variants update, if you have the high end, because it's very hard to do because Yigni doesn't really have innate support for it. But if you have like the high end gear to force double hand on Yigni and then give him, the chain cap up, etc., especially something along the lines of the Dazzling Demoness card, you can force him double hand, and because his modifiers are so high and now they get variance on top of that, his damage is actually pretty relevant. Based on like really high end whale calculations, he actually out damages Laura Croft
Really?
in Clash of Wills. Yeah, but it's very hard to build, and he is a little tight on killers. So once you start, building for like a dual race killer that he's not favored for, it can then hurt him a little bit. But assuming it's against a race he can easily gear for, like I think fairies and stuff, yeah, his damage is actually pretty good now. But like I said, it does take very high end gear because he has no support at all for true double hand. He doesn't even have a 5x chain cap. He's at a 4x chain cap while double handing. So very, very hard to build. But if you can do it, it's a good payoff.
And what do you think about the next 6 months after his relevancy starts waning with his damage still?
I would say if they're going to give him intrinsic abilities, they should just lean into the double hand and just make him a naturally double hand unit. So give him some true double hand, give him the chain cap up increase. That way we don't have to use like all the slots to force it. Then you can open up more slots for killers, and then he'll be a much more flexible and good unit. He could also use some flat magic because like the rest of the older units, no flat stats at all. So that would help him. So give him some double hand support and some flat stats.
Hopefully
The
they'll
modifiers are fine.
hopefully they'll
Go ahead.
also allow us to have there some kind of like a side event, or did they just give it out for free? How they did? Can't remember what her name is. They turned her one-hand katana into a two-handed katana a long time ago. Hopefully they can do something like that for Yigni's STMR, because
Ellispiris.
yeah, her. Hopefully they can do that with Yigni because his STMR is not very good, and I don't think it was ever good to begin with, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like it's a mage dagger, and just not many mages really want daggers.
So hopefully they'll be able to do that. They can get to like 280 attack, 280 magic, and also allow it to be two-handed. What do you think about that? That sounds pretty
Yeah,
good.
that'd be great. By my memory, I don't think there's a two-handed mage dagger in JP at all, so that'd be a really nice update for global to give dagger mages a two-handed weapon. Not they don't have that many, but I mean Yigni is one, and he would certainly love it. So
It kind of makes sense for him because he's kind of small. So it's kind of believable to put two hands on one dagger because their hands are so small. So it's kind of believable.
Definitely.
Anyways, we got Bulwark here, who is still used today. He's not insanely old, but he is still being used today because he has a lot of things, including the famous Tempest Tempo, who has relevant amps, and also can Wind Imperil, Wind Imbue. It's all in one package. Very good ability here. He also has a lot of other good things as well. So what do you think about this unit, Bulwark?
Yeah, he is extremely good. And you mentioned the Tempest Tango, and if you're bringing him the Clash of Wills, he's actually got the upgraded version and his morale only skills that gives 60% wind amp, which is even crazier. Unfortunately, that is only in Clash of Wills. But yeah, I think he is our only at the current time amplifier above 45% for the whole party, and it's very very good. He also, just like Ling, has the package of 4 different killers at 150%. I would say overall, other than that, though, Bulwark has a little bit less use than Ling. He does have the killers, he does have a few amplifies, and that really big wind amp. But I tend to find that myself, I don't really use much else in his kit, other than I guess the grandest that gives the mitigation. That's actually good too. But like he does have a one stack Mirage, but one stack is a little eh. And just that doesn't really have a whole lot else. I guess the instrument in peril, but not many people care about that for the most part.
I honestly
So I
thought that
don't
was
know.
going to be a bigger deal than it was. I thought that was going to be the next big thing. Like people were going to force instruments on people so that they could use it, and then it didn't happen.
I know, me too, me too. As soon as I saw him get released, I put Conch's STMR in item world. I'm like, I gotta run this. I'm gonna be using this all the time, and just didn't happen. Didn't happen.
What do you think will work in the next 6 months?
If they're gonna buff him, I would say the same thing as Ling. He needs to get those killers raised up to about 45 or 200%, and his amplifies raised to about 45. He does have the wind at 60, but he has dark and ice as well that are I think 30%. Those could easily go to 45% to help him out. And yeah, that's really for the most part all he really needs. Just buff those numbers a little bit. Oh, also more Mirage would be nice. Like bring that Mirage up to a two stack would be convenient. That way it's a
Yeah, I think that
little
would
bit
be pretty
more
good.
more modern.
I do use it because of the LB fill rate buff, but the just one stack nowadays is really irrelevant. Like you can almost never get away with doing that nowadays. I will say that the Tonberry Boogie thing is going to be interesting in the future, though, for a certain golden boy.
Oh, Riser, yeah, that's. I'm pretty sure that was unexpected by the global team, the way
And
that works.
now they're going to have to start balancing Clash of Wills bosses around this strategy because it's just so broken a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Here's someone who I really wanted to talk about, Crestnick, and I already know what he needs. I think everybody knows what he needs, but he can do quite a few things. I mean, he's a healer. We don't really need healers all that much, so you kind of need to make healers do more than just heal nowadays. For anyone who's a new player listening to this, back in the day, healing healers just healer role and they can just heal. That was fine back in the day because you didn't really need anything else. But nowadays, healing as a role by itself is really irrelevant. So you need like this, for example, you need so much stuff to do. And the one thing I know that he needs dual cast for abilities in the Brave Shift form, because honestly, these abilities are not insanely broken anymore like they used to be. And I don't think they were like that amazing. Like they're pretty good, but not like super broken to not be dual cast. Right?
For sure, dual cast and the shift form would absolutely help him out. The big thing is the I forget what it's called, the Arcane Stimulant for the morale gauge. That's pretty much the main reason you use him in Clash of Wills because it's crazy good. It's 10% every single turn forever, just auto casting, which is great. But the rest of his kit, you don't really see that much of because, like you mentioned, you just don't have the turns. You've only got 3 turns. Most Clash of Wills fights are over before his shift comes off cooldown. So you get one Arcane Stimulant, sometimes maybe the resist buff, and then most of the time you'll use his imbue on the boss to imbue the boss with light. And the rest of the kit you don't really see because there's no time for it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, dual cast would be awesome. Then we can start using Arcane Potion, Arcane Remedy, etc. And that would make him a lot more useful. A lot more useful,
If
definitely.
Gumi's afraid of the Arcane Stimulant, then they could just make it a unique dual cast, so you can't dual cast Arcane Stimulant, for example.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, dual cast with unique selection only. Absolutely.
I think that would be fair. So in the next 6 months, I don't think anyone's going to talk about him other than just like we just mentioned the Arcane Stimulant. We don't really use him otherwise unless there's a Clash of Wills boss that does insane, stupid stuff that you need to heal. Otherwise, you'll die. Because there's been Clash of Wills bosses in the last year where there's been times where you actually need to bring a healer or else you can't survive.
And that Magnus is still very, very useful on bosses that hit hard physically.
I use it all the time for sure. It's very useful.
hmm
So what do you think, other than like maybe dual cast? What do you think he needs?
Um, that's a good question because like more stats are like, yeah, who cares? More he's got if you give him the dual cast, I don't think he needs new abilities. So, I mean, I guess you could say like more morale fill, but he's already one of the best anyway, so that's not really something he needs. So that's a really good question. I guess maybe more offensive support, like Aerith has Holy, maybe give him Holy with like a bigger modifier buff or something so he can cap on the kill turn or something. That might help.
I think so. Because honestly, this, like, I was never really a fan of all this light stuff, like the chaining and stuff. You don't have time to use it, like you mentioned. And this LB, like, you just don't even look at it because it's just like, look at this. It's just unappealing. 5 hits, and it's, I think it's light focus, I believe. Yeah, light fixed damage. Like, why would you, oh, this for himself. But this does, yeah, light magic damage. It's just unappealing because a lot of the times you don't really care about using light. There's very few times where you actually want to just focus on the light element. So that's Crestnick. Now we have a very controversial unit, at least in my Discord. This is a very controversial unit, Olivera. So so this unit, I don't know. What do you think about this unit, seriously?
This unit was kind of like a mascot for me for a long time because he came out. I pulled for him on like the fear of missing out. I went for him on the last day, got him, and it's just like I haven't really found him to be useful at all this time. His numbers were just so low. That being said, though, similar to Yigni, the double hand mage patch actually helps him out quite a bit, and it raises his damage to the point of being relevant. The big problem for Olivera is that he is hard locked to dark, exclusively to dark. Can't imbue, and he has no other options for extra elements. And that is a really, really big handicap. He's got some other interesting stuff like the magnets that gives chaining frames to a player. To be honest, I have literally never ever used this a single time. It's just like whatever. So yeah, Olivera. Like his damage is good now. If dark works and he's got double hand naturally, you don't have to go out of your way for it. His base form LB I think is like 540x modifier at full morale. Yeah, the base form is the morale one, and it's good damage. Like his damage is totally fine now after magical variants. Especially because you can use like dark range TMR to power it up because the base form uses pure magic. So yeah, it's hard to think how they could give him another element because he is magic, meaning you can't imbue him. So I guess he's just stuck forever as dark. I don't know.
Is this base LB tag chaining or is just normal Chaos Wave Awakened?
The base form is normal. The shift is tag chain, but the shift doesn't have morale scaling. The base form is just plain regular chaining. It's Chaos Wave Awakened times 4. So quad cast Chaos Wave Awakened.
I think I would like for them to change that because not very many people are using Chaos Wave Awakened. At least quad casting it. Most people are stuck to triple casting it in terms of like upgrading black magic to being Chaos Wave Awakened, for example. And most units can only triple cast it. Yeah, you could equip the Uranus ring for this, but I think it would just be better to be Bolting Strike instead, because then you would be able to work with it a little easier.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
And in his Brave Shift form, there's really
his Brave Shift form got like a pretty big buff with the Dazzling Demoness card, and if you have again the high end gear, he can actually do pretty good in Dark Visions now. I forget the exact calculations, but he is definitely to the point where he matters now in Dark Visions on a dark magical stage. If you have the Dazzling Demoness card, like that card really does help quite a few mages, and it gives him such a huge base MP and percent MP, and it gives him the chain cap for free without having to waste a gear slot, because he actually does not want to use Magister's gear because it gives no MP. So Magister's gear is bad for him. Now the card gives it for free, and it basically opens up 3 or 4 of his materia slots for killers, which was his big problem, was no killers. Yeah, so he in Dark Visions is pretty good now. As far as future buffs, I would say just flat stats, because he does have the EX3, but just more would be even more helpful. Like his base form still has relatively low magic, even though the modifiers are good. So flat stats is what he needs.
I think he needs some killers, just some normal killers. He has no killers in his passives at all.
Oh, absolutely. That would definitely help. Yeah, the Mazurka intrinsic ability has 200% to 4 killers on it. So that would be very useful on Olivera as well. Give him like 200% to a couple or 4 races. That'd be a very big help.
It'd be insane actually, because then if you have the Dazzling Demoness card, now you have that settled. You have killers, so it's easier to gear for. He's all set. He's like almost like a perfect unit for chaining purposes, I would say.
Definitely.
So in the next 6 months, hopefully he does get something. What you said, will we be using him?
Well, Clash of Wills, the big asterisk is only on dark fights because he does still have that dark lock. But the next time we get a dark weak Clash of Wills boss, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a couple teams with Olivera on it.
I'm looking forward to that because I think that he has some promise. I think most people are just coping with him right now, but I think he'll be pretty good, like you said. So hopefully that'll be the case. And here's someone who, I mean, big asterisk morale unit. We all know who this guy already know though. So yeah, Carton. He's still really powerful, but he was never really. Maybe for the first few ones, but he was never really. Maybe you can attest to this better than me, but I was told he wasn't really ever used for rank 1 clears. He was just used for like quick 99 clears, pretty much, right?
There was one or two Clash of Wills where Carton was a big deal. There was one of them, I forget the exact, I think Trescian baby, that spammed that dark attack that was very, very dangerous. And Carton was used for his base form LB that gives the entire party dark absorb. And that was kind of a big deal for that one Clash. And it's still pretty useful. I think a couple people use that on the Dark Rain Vision World because Dark Rain does those like 800% in perils, and Carton could cheese it. So it's useful sometimes, but it is still kind of like a gimmick ability. But as far as his damage goes, it's good, but it's definitely outdated at this point. Except for like turn 1 stuff, he is still by far one of the best units for turn 1 OTK. Either lazy clears or you just like high-end, kill an EX fight on turn 1, be done with it. Carton is still amazing for that. But for like total burst after the rest of the team spends a few turns setting up, yeah, his damage is kind of outdated at this point. So, yeah. I still like him a lot. Go ahead.
I'm going to pitch in what I think he needs. Well, first of all, his base form needs like a lot of help in terms of damage. Make it a setup Brave Shift, a base form, which it kind of already is. Give him 350% attack. Give him get a little higher break, meaning 80% break here. Do 40% Fist Imperil because eventually we're going to be getting 40% Weapon Imperils with Tidus, for example. So that'd be nice to see. And then the Brave Shift form, just allow him to be TDH because the True Duel thing is useless. And you guys already know my opinion on True Duel right now. So he really needs TDH in his Brave Shift form because, at least for me, a lot of people may not have this difficulty, but gearing him TDH is kind of hard sometimes, especially against something he's not strong against in terms of these killers here. So yes, he has 3 killers, but if you're not fighting anything, you're not fighting a demon, you're not fighting a human, you're not fighting a reaper, I think it's kind of hard to gear him for TDH.
For sure. I have the same problem. I use Carton a lot, and in most builds I use him, I'm just not capping his stats because I just can't realistically do it. Plus killers, like I'll leave him at like 300% true double hand or like 320 out of 400 attack power percent because it's just trying to fit everything plus killers. It's incredibly hard to do for him. So yeah, perfect suggestion. If they're going to give him intrinsic abilities, just make him double hand. That's what he needs. Double hand.
That's pretty much all he needs, honestly. Because I think he's still pretty good. In the next 6 months, I think he'll be power crept already because 6 months in terms of TPS. Because we talked, there's been a lot of supports on this list, and we've been more lenient on them because supports last longer. But for DPS, it's like going to get an ice cream cone, and when you're done, it's over. So, so in terms of like, I'm pretty sure they're going to focus mostly on his Feral Frenzy. What do you think is like a fair modifier for that in 6 months if he got a buff?
So it's 1,050 right now in Dark Visions and 13. I'm just doing quick math in my head. About 2,000 it looks like in Clash of Wills, assuming I mathed that correctly. Considering we've already got Lara Croft at 3,500, we've got now Yigni at like 4,400, and he does have variants at this point. He just needs a really big modifier boost, almost to the point of doubling it. So I guess just double it. Sure, that seems fair. Honestly,
It
sounds crazy, but yeah, that would just bring it to the standard. It's not even power creep.
With the Berserk, it would be even better. So yeah, I think that's fair, just to double it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and allow to single cast when dueling. Oh, does this? It does this 3 times. Never mind. Anyway, we don't need to worry about that then. Yeah, so that's fine. Anyways, on to Maeve, or Maeve, however you say it. She has infinite turns, which is I always love that. I still use her all the time, so it's kind of weird at this point. We're getting to newer units, so it's kind of harder to tell if they're going to be power crept or not right away. But she still has so many useful things, including the effective strategy, the natural wall, the practice lure, the killers. Her killers are insane. They helped me cap. They helped me get a rank 1 clear. Last one, I believe, or it was one. It was one of them. The last one or the one before it. One of those ones. She has the LB fill. She has the instant once per turn, the hunting call, the frail morale gauge. She has the barrier. She has the LBs, which are very valuable. So, what do you think about this unit?
She's definitely one of the top tanks in Clash of Wills. I do feel like she was maybe a little bit crept by someone like Chow or Esther, depending on if you're using physical or magical tanking. They can do a little bit overall better than her. I think Maeve is actually bulkier than both of those. So in terms of pure bulk, Maeve is, I believe, the winner. But she's definitely good, and she does have like a better support kit than Behemi overall. For me, just my personality, it's kind of I know some people don't like this, but for me, it's kind of like you're either the best or you're not. And I feel like maybe she's not the best, but still very good. I think she's like right there on the edge of being of greatness. So just a few more buffs, and we could be there.
So, what do you think those buffs could be?
I would say the one thing that could really set her apart, because instead of just buffing her tanking or whatever, which she's already good at, or utility, which is fine, I'd say the thing that could set her apart is those barriers as well as her finishing damage. Because her base form LB, it looks like it was designed to be like a relevant finisher because it has morale scaling and it's got like an okay modifier. It's not great, but it's okay. Like a 320 for a tank, that's okay. It's a little bit outdated these days, so I would say raise that modifier a whole lot. Give her like more support for her finishing turn damage, so that we can use her on the kill turn to help buff it up. And also those barriers. Now that's kind of funny to say buff those barriers because she already has, I believe, the best barriers in the game. But I really love a specialized unit. So I would say if we have a fight and the fight says, okay, I want barrier on this turn, I want my thought process to go, I need a barrier. I'm going for Maeve. She's on the party. So I think she's got 30,000 or 25,000 as her max. I would raise that as high as 50,000. Like it's not game breaking. Like bosses hit crazy hard these days, and units already have like 45,000 hit points on DPS units. So give us a big barrier. Let's go. Yeah. So I would make her the queen of barriers and a really good finisher.
And it's
While
not
still while tanking.
for anyone who's listening to that and think that's crazy. Like, there's a unit that currently doesn't really exist on global, but on JP she exists, and she gives a gigantic barrier with a crown buff. So it's not out of the realm of impossibility to have Maeve have like a 45k HP barrier at 100% morale, for example. I think it's not unreasonable.
I agree.
In terms of tanking, she's still more than fine. She doesn't really need anything, and she has the EX buffs already, so that's quite good. I wish that this the Warring Spear was a little better for her, because using her LBs right away, it really isn't useful. You usually use her LBs like later on. So I wish this Warring Spear was something a little more interesting for her in particular. Maybe something similar to what Esther had, where it was LB fill rate for everybody or something like that. That would be quite nice.
Yeah.
But in terms of tanking and everything, I think she's still fine. And in 6 months, I think she'll still be pretty fine. Probably not the best, but probably pretty fine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And another slightly, not super old unit. We're kind of getting in the downturn of actual kind of units that came out not too long ago. Tiana, and this was another controversial unit that some people like it, some people don't like it. I honestly think that her base form is really underrated. I think it's very, very useful. I love all the things that she can do. I don't really care. I mean, the amps are very nice. Uh, but I'm liking all the things that she can provide, like the accuracy buff. She has mitigation. She has stacks of Mirage. She has HP barrier. Like, there's no unit like this that even compares to basically what she can do. Because she does basically, she's like Ling. She's like Louise. She's like, all these units that are combined to one kind of a thing here. So I think that's pretty useful. The absorb elements for these certain elements here are very nice. Quadcast, the heal. I've used all of these things. I've used all these things. And one of the most overpowered things I've ever seen, my jaw dropped when I saw this when she came out. This infinite turns elemental resistance. So she can scale pretty much infinitely with this ability. Yeah, it's only one use. But as long as she doesn't die, as long as no one dies, for at least for a while, this is insane. What do you think about this?
Oh yeah, the Magnus is very good, especially that elemental absorb Magnus you pointed out. That can be incredibly clutch on certain turns in Dark Visions. I'm not Dark Visions. Well, Dark Visions too, but Clash of Wills. Yeah, the whole support kit in the base form, like you mentioned, she has a great support kit, and I love it. The big problem for me with it is her shift form. Her shift form with that stupid stacking, because she's got to spend so many turns stacking. There's just no time to use the base form for the most part, and not to mention if she dies, like for example, the last fight we just had that killed the whole party on the threshold. Yeah, this whole stacking mechanic, this has to go. Like Tiana is a great unit. Her damage after the variance update is totally fine in Clash of Wills. It's pretty bad out of Clash of Wills. She's like a heavy morale scaler. But in Clash of Wills, her damage is now fine. It's just that stacking is excessive. It's like 25 or 25 stacks. Yeah, and plus the setup turn to unlock her quintuple cast. Like you're spending the whole fight stacking, and if anything goes wrong, you just lost all your stacks. Um, like man,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating because she's like she's go for it.
12 times is way too long. And I said that even I think in my review. I think I may have said that it's just too long. It should be like 5 or 6 at least to get to max stacks. And it's only one turn, basically 1 to 2 turns to get that to max stacks.
Yeah, it's actually 25 stacks.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. I see it now. Yeah, that's way too much.
It's bonker. Who thought this was a good idea? Yeah, so for her, like what would fix her in the future is just get rid of that stacking. Like it is not a useful gimmick. Just it's her damage isn't even that extreme at max stack. So like there is no problem just having her just flat out do the damage on turn one. Like that's fine. So just get rid of the stacking. That would free up her base form to use that awesome support kit that we just don't really have time to use because she's spending like most of the turns of the Clash of Wills fight just stacking and getting ready instead of being able to use all that awesome support.
As well as if she gets an intrinsic buff, hopefully she gets some killers that are not restricted to throwing weapons. Because this is really annoying. This is one of the most annoying passes I've ever seen. She has to equip a throwing weapon, which there will be a throwing weapon that's two-handed in the future, but honestly, you'd rather just use rods. So that's just a big thing for me that I hate this. I hate this, and I hate that her vision card also kind of needed throwing weapons. So hopefully she can get an interesting buff where she just gets flat killers with no restrictions, because there's no need to have restrictions.
Yeah, I agree entirely. That's just uncalled for.
And finally, hopefully they can get rid of this goofy LB here, because it's just really goofy.
Oh, yes, indeed. Change the LB to non-elemental physical typed magic, and then on the base form, all those amplifies, give them a self-imbue so that she can choose the element that she wants to finish with. That would be such a good change.
Perfect. That would be perfect. I can already see if she would be top tier after that, because she has so many elements here to choose from. It'd be bonkers. She'd be top tier. Easily.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so this one's going to be very hard to talk about. This one's going to be very, very hard to talk about because he's already insanely good. Okay, we've got Divine Chow here, and I don't know how to make him any better other than, like, He already has the EX buff, so I can't talk about those. Intrinsic buff. Like, what could we even think about? I don't know.
Yeah, like you say, when you're already talking about the best unit in his category, does he even need to be better? If we were tasked by the head boss and he said, okay, it's time to buff Chow, you got to do it. What are you going to do? I guess the big weakness he has is when he's doing his Omni covering for the whole counter build. He is very, very squishy to physical damage. So I guess we could buff up his defense, give him some true double hand defense with using a shield. That would be useful so that he's not quite so squishy while Omni covering. You could also increase his damage in the shift form. It's okay-ish, and now we've got things like not Hadlar. Who's the double hand spirit fist? Mam has a
Yeah.
double hand spirit fist that he can now go with a double hand build currently on global. In the future, he can use Seymour's STMR to stay with his natural staves. So his damage is better than it was because of the variance change, but even so, it's still a little bit on the low side. So just like Maeve, I would increase his finishing damage so that once the fight is over, he doesn't need to tank anymore. He can swap over and help out on the final kill turn and just use a better finishing.
Yeah, I think that was what I was gonna go for. His brave shift form isn't real. I don't really use it. Do you use his brave shift form at all?
Not really. The damage is just too low, to be honest.
Because I remember looking at it. I was like, back when it came out, I looked at his base form. I was like, my jaw dropped. But then when you look to his brave shift form, it's like, who cares? Just stick to his base form where he's best at, right? That's just my opinion.
Oh, you know something? You know something I would change is I would get rid of his auto cover. Because if you're going for the omni cover strategy, that means you can't really shift. Because when you shift back and use his LB for omni cover, at the end of the turn, the auto cover overrides it. And that is just
Ooh,
obnoxious. I
that's
hate that.
okay. That's very interesting for people who have Chow and didn't know that. So that's just like a general tip. Probably shouldn't do that. Probably shouldn't do that. All right. So Chow, I don't know, like 6 months down the road, he's still going to be used. So there's no reason to even think about him being power crept, because even if they make, okay, so let's like say that they make someone a new tank, like I doubt they're going to have Omni cover. I doubt they're going to have all these stats for Spirit, and I doubt they're going to have all these support abilities that are going to be nearly as good, because this guy has limited time. The next tank party isn't going to be limited time, so it's probably going to be on the lower end. So I just don't think there's anything. If you're a Chow owner, I don't think there's anything to worry about. So it's gonna be kind of crazy to talk about Esther because she's just insanely powerful. It's like the same thing for Chow. It's like the same vein, but in terms of damage instead. She's at the top of the leaderboard, and she's getting a buff. I don't understand why. I don't understand.
Her buffs in 6 months are actually coming on Thursday.
I don't get it. Someone must have said. Someone must have said, "Hey, we just get her buffs now." I don't know. It's crazy. Her base form is still very good. The biggest criticism I'll say for Brave Shift form is that I hate these LB crystal fill, or these LB crystal costs instead of MP. It's the biggest detraction for me in terms of using our Brave Shift form. It's still manageable. Like, for example, if you have Ling in the party and things like that, it's more manageable. But there's a lot of cases for me where I can't get it filled up fast enough. So this is a reverse of this surging energy. I wish this was the LB fill at the start of battle, because then her Brave Shift form would be an instant use on turn 1 instead of having you set up for it, for example.
I agree entirely. As far as a damage dealer, Esther is amazing. But if I'm using her as a tank, just like you say, she is an enormous headache on turn 1. Once the fight gets going, if you give her a counterattack ability, her normal attack refills LB gauge, so she'll counter like 5 times a turn, and she'll always have a full LB gauge. No problem at all. But that turn 1 can be just the worst if you don't have someone to fill LB on the first turn.
It was the last Clash of Wills. I was trying to make her Brave Shift form work, and it was super headache worthy. It was like I was bashing my head against the wall, trying to get her LB filled up. So we don't need to talk about the next 6 months like you mentioned, because she's already getting her buffs. So I'm assuming that she's gonna have. It's gonna be similar to. Can we go back to Skye and look at her LB? I'm assuming it's gonna be similar to this, where this is gonna stay the same for Esther. Go back to that, please. This will stay the same, but then she's gonna get a morale thing under it, like how Skye has right here, where it's a morale ability as well. What do you think that might be what happens?
Yeah, very possible. So they would like maybe change the first part to like 29 hits, and then add that 30th hit as a different morale skill or morale scaler. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool. And she's also getting like a mod buff when the new Sylvie's in the party as well. So yeah, like her damage is already kind of crazy, and it's getting even better in both Clash of Wills and everywhere, starting on Thursday, and that's really good. Like her base form is amazing. Like it's smooth. It's got a great rotation. Really no improvements needed.
I still don't understand why they're buffing her, but I'm not gonna complain about it. I'm not gonna complain about buffs. And a pretty new unit at this point. I mean, she's only a few, like maybe like month and a half old. So it's another unit that's gonna we're talking about all of them, but it's getting kind of hard to talk about the newer stuff. Like Roberta is literally the perfect package, and we've been talking about a few units that have been really really amazing and near perfection. Roberta is perfection. She has LB fill. She has Mirage. She has stat buffs. She has killers. She has 45% fire amps. She has stat buffs. She has imperils. She has HP and MP heals, which I've actually used these, and then the downsides are kind of annoying, but I have used them. And she has the Mystic Breath, which is insane. She has the Mega Breath, so she can actually become a chainer into a finisher. So she can technically in the right. Sometimes it's kind of hard to do, but I've done it before where you can actually self cap her, and that's also very nice. She has a Spear in Peril. She has the Morale Fill in a Rave Shift form. She can be a complete finisher. She's not as strong as Kane, but she's almost as strong as Kane, I believe, right?
Correct. Yep. And she's non-elemental, which can be really flexible.
And her LBs, both of her LBs are quite good in certain situations. I've used both of them. Like I don't know how else to make her any better than just raise her jump mod to be even better. That's all I can think of, because she's just perfect. Like what you said before, maybe raise the killer numbers, but like everything else, like there's nothing else to look at.
One thing I would say is she's a kind of like Dark Rain, where forcing double hand on her for the magic side it's still an overall gain, but it's a lot smaller of a gain because the trade off is you're losing all those flat stats from the double
Mm-hmm.
STMR. And yeah, so if I was going to change her in the future, I would add a Chronicle recipe to make one of her STMRs double-handed with double the flat stats. That way, you keep the 1,000 flat magic while using STMR, and you get the double hand variance. So that's how I was going to buff her in 6 months, it would be to give a recipe to make a double-handed Crimson Malice with twice the flat stats.
And maybe
That
you
way
have like 200, 230, 245, 250 magic and attack, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep. That'd be a real nice change in the future to give her a little buff down the road.
Yep. And then in 6 months, she's still going to be useful, right?
I think so. Definitely. Yeah. She's exactly like you said, the perfect package. Love it.
Now onto the reverse of the perfect package. We have Freebie here, and I apologize to Freebie fans. I'm a Freebie fan, so it was very painful to see this unit. And there are people who are coping with her, saying that she has a field effect. But honestly, I just think that she's just forgettable. She has a lot of things that a lot of other units can already do. So I think we're going to take more time in talking about her. So I think that she needs a lot of help. So I'm going to let you go first.
For me, the biggest thing is her damage. Her damage is very, very undertuned for being such a modern and recent unit. The magic variance did help her base form quite a bit, and now the base form is technically her highest damage because with the 500% focus buff, it helps out a lot. But those modifiers, dude, like 500% focus does not save a 165x LB. That is like day one Neovision's tier. That is so low. It's crazy. It's 195 in Clash. Yes, true. But even that is, I mean,
It's pathetically
Skye
low.
is Yeah, Skye is walking around with a 765, and we've got like 195 from a unit that came a year later. It's unfortunate. She really needs a modifier boost. Her stats are amazing. Her breaks are good. She's got that awesome field effect. Like she's got a good kit. It's just that that damage is facepalm.
hmm And also, it's kind of isn't it kind of like hard to juggle all because she does have still because I don't have her, so I don't use her. So obviously I can't use her. So don't you have to like juggle some things with her too?
Yeah, her kit is absolutely split between both forms, and if you're using her as like a turn one buffer or something, she can't do it all. She can't do the breaks and the buffs in the same time. Her kit is, I mean, I'll be honest, her kit is pretty well designed, and it's pretty smooth to use her once the fight gets going. But you absolutely need multiple turns of setup to get everything online. And once you do get it all online, it's very easy to maintain. It's just that kind of like Esther trying to use the shift form. That first few turns can be a struggle because you don't have access to the whole kit because it's like split half and half.
So just she just needs damage, is what you're saying, pretty much.
Yeah, I think her kit is totally fine. It's just that they really missed the mark on that damage tuning. It's significantly too low. So if they're going to give her intrinsic abilities, mod buff, absolutely mod buff, and big ones.
What do you think we're looking at?
So if we're comparing her to Skye, I mean, Skye's got a 765 LB with Titus of Spirit, disclaimer, but we're talking high end. So I would say because she does have the 500% focus buff, and that is a big deal. That is the only reason she's not trashed here. Is that focus buff really carries that low modifier? So I would just ballparking. I'd say like a 600 modifier LB plus 500% focus would make her probably stronger than Skye, and that would help her quite a bit.
I think that'd be fair because, like you mentioned, you have to juggle a lot of things in her kit to make her, on top of things. So even if her LB is very powerful, you still need to keep up on everything else, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I hopefully because I know there's a certain person on Reddit, for example, who really wants this unit to be buffed. So hopefully, hopefully eventually she will get buffed. I think she deserves it because Fravia was basically one of the biggest things in Brave Exvius that carried the game for a while. Because I know a lot of people, for example, came into the game immediately as soon as Fravia came out because she was super good back in the day. Being able to beat out the top chainer of Orlando, for example. And even though I think she was locked to ice, it didn't even matter. Back then, being locked to an element didn't matter as much because the Imperil was fine and most trials were kind of, you didn't really care too much about elements. As long as the unit dealt chaining damage, you were fine, right? At least that's my memory.
Yep, for the most part, pretty much.
So yeah, hopefully she'll be 10-2. I don't think she's gonna get any buffs in the next 6 months, but maybe next year she'll get something. And the final unit, and it's gonna be this is in almost the same vein as Roberta. It's gonna be very hard to talk about Kaito because I will say there is one thing that I can criticize is that his LB mods are not the best, but they're not really supposed to be. I suppose they're just helping chaining out because, for example, this modifier is kind of bad in terms of because above 100% morale is already kind of hard to do in a lot of Clash of Wills unless you have Chow. So this modifier is not the best. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely like kind of on par a little bit, but yeah, as far as its pure damage goes, it's certainly behind. Yeah, it's not great. Um, that being said, I kind of look at him more as like a breaker first, damage dealer second. But this is where they got it right. So like for example, like Laguna or something, where it's kind of like the same general idea of breaker plus DPS. They just don't, the DPS is not there. So for Kaito, his damage is good. It's not the best, but it's good. But his kit, dude, oh my god,
It's
this is like
insane.
my favorite unit in the game at the current time. It's so overloaded. He has everything you could want in Clash of Wills. Now some of it is only in Clash of Wills, like the really big killers, the Omni Imperil, the Omni Weapon Imperil. All that is Clash only. But even out of Clash, he's still like a good breaker. They fixed his Magnus ability to be usable outside of Clash, so he has the buff and debuff manipulation for that's literally unique to him only, and this is really cool. And again, his damage is still very good. It's just not like Esther tier.
And Crashing Wave is insane. I love the auto cast. So even if you're not even if you could stay in his brave shift form and use this, and now that your breaks are settled for a few turns, now you can shift back to the base form and get yourself set up. Because I've done this in the last clash. This is what I did, where I shifted to use his Crashing Wave, and then you can shift back to his base form, and then you can set yourself up. It's amazing. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next 6 months, he's still gonna be useful, for sure.
Definitely. If we're if we were like again, if we're forced to buff him in 6 months, I guess just raise the mod on that LB. That's really all he needs. Like his kit is fine. He's got good breaks. He's got good damage, a smooth rotation. He's already got the flat stats. He gears very easily. He's got lots of open materia slots if you've got high end gear. So yeah, just I guess if we're gonna buff him in 6 months, raise the modifier.
And did you use him in War Mech?
Yes, I did. I actually did a clear where he solo cleared it. Well, 2 of them.
Really?
Were the only damage dealers. I got it in 13 turns with double Kaito, no other DPS, no Esther. Double Kaito was a 13 turn clear.
And this is the advanced version?
Yes, hard mode.
Amazing, amazing. And you're using which form were you using for his damage?
The base form, because the base form has that racial modifier to mechs. Like you mentioned, the LB mod is a little bit lowish, but versus mechs, because that the bottom one, the 100x with defense ignore, is actually 200x, and the 60 versus mechs, so it's actually a 260 baseline. But because it's a triple part, because it's so things like Tyvus' Spirit apply 3 times, as well as his Magnus ability, the mod boost on the Magnus, it applies 3 times. So that's a 350x modifier versus machines. So he's basically premium tier against.
Yeah, that's machines. Impressive. That's impressive for sure. That's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. And what about his pure liquid infusion?
Yeah, that's talking about his Magnus ability. That's a Magnus twice a battle. Yeah, that if you see right there, increase LB modifier 30x, that applies 3 times to the base form LB. So it's really a 90x mod boost to the base form LB.
So yeah, I think that it just fix this without the mech. Just keep the 60 times, it's fine. But allow this to be a little bit more in the future, in the next 6 months, perhaps, if we were to do that. But I don't think there's anything else you need to change, because he's just super insane. His STMR is very good. His TMR maybe in the future. Like, did this come up at all with this TMR, this absorb water damage?
The water absorb, if you remember the help me out, the JP trial, that the octopus trial. One of the common strategies was to provoke with Veritas of the Water, the 4-star unit, because she can absorb that 800% in peril and not get destroyed by it. So Kaito can do that way better in the future. He can actually do something on the fight other than Water Veritas just sitting there doing nothing but provoking. So that's helpful. But other than that, I mean, it's too specialized. But it could come up again.
All right, and that's all we've got. So I wish that we knew about Sylvie. But and also Wilk, so maybe in the future we can make another video similar to this where we can talk about at least half of the units, because I mean we know about most of them, but maybe we can come back to, like, in a little while we can talk about Wilk and Sylvie, and maybe there'll be more in the future as well.
Cool.
What do you think about
Definitely.
that?
Yeah, I'm super hyped for those 2 guys. I wish the preview news gave more information. Instead of making us wait until Thursday.
Sadly, we have to wait. So, stay tuned for. Do you do any kind of reviews for any units?
Not for the most part, because people are already doing really great reviews, and it's a lot of work. So definitely appreciate the work you put into your reviews. I use some of them myself as well when I'm looking up for new, especially the JP units that you have already done all the research, and it's super appreciative that you do that, and they're very helpful. So because of that, I feel like that's mostly covered, so I don't have to do the extra work myself.
Are you going to be pulling for Sylvie or Wilk?
The final decision always comes down to the data mine, but I would say like 98% chance yes. Yeah, unless the data mine is a complete disaster, then I'm definitely going to go for him. So yeah,
I'm more favored towards just pulling for Sylvie, because I honestly like the idea that Wilk has dual weapon imperils, and I like that his STMR can change, and that's probably the gimmick that he has. But at the end of the day, he's just probably going to be another finisher, And yeah, he's a premium finisher, and those probably be really amazing. But I think Sylvie just has more of an appeal. To
Yeah,
me,
those 100% AOE party amplifies,
it's
man.
insane.
I'm ready for it.
It's super crazy. I suspect that there'll be some restrictions on Sylvie because honestly, that seems so super bonkers. I don't think there's gonna be huge restrictions on her because I mean she's a CG unit. They want people to pull for her because those CG animations, guys, they're not cheap, especially ones that are custom made in house because that's not taken from the Dissidia games because Sylvie's not from Dissidia, of course. For anyone who does not know, a lot of the CG animations that are from Final Fantasy units come from those Dissidia cutscenes. Basically, they rip them and they put them on their own thing, and then they just make them a cutscene, CG animation. But Sylvie was made in-house, custom made, so that probably was a big chunk of change. So they can't make her bad. They can't make her bad. They want people to pull, and same with Esther, her CG animation, and she was amazing. So I'm assuming. And also, isn't there something that you mentioned before, but only briefly? There was something about if you have Sylvie and Esther in the party, there's something that happens?
Yes, from the preview on the stream, while Sylvie and Esther are in the same party, every single turn, Esther is going to get a mod buff to her LB, kind of like the way Aang and Yan had that auto buff when they're both in the same party and that buffs them up. It's the exact same concept. So as long as they're both in the party, Esther will have a modifier boost to her LB on top of her existing modifier. So it'll be even stronger.
That's crazy. So if you have an Esther, I think Sylvie may. I don't like saying an instant pull for a lot of things, but I think if you have an Esther, it's more advantageous for you to try at least look into her kit because they've tried it before with. I think they also tried with Fravia and the other Fravia, and it was just kind of like whatever. But I think this will be a lot bigger of a deal.
I certainly hope so. Yeah, super hyped.
All right, I think that's going to be it. I think we've talked for over an hour, so I had a lot of fun though. I had a lot of fun talking about these units, and hopefully you did too.
Absolutely. Clash of Wills is my favorite content in the game, so I could talk about it for 4 hours. So thanks again for inviting me.
All right. And I'm going to link your channel in the comment section down below, although I think everybody that's watching this is already subscribed to you because you're so big. I think you'll be fine.
Sounds great.
If there is anyone who hasn't heard of Sinzar, I would definitely recommend checking him out. He does a lot of... well, just tell about what you do on your channel, actually.
For the most part, I really focus on like trial content and like ranked content, for example, Dark Visions, Clash of Wills, and also once a week I will discuss news with guests, etc. And basically all about Brave Exvius. Occasionally I'll like post a different game that I play, but mostly Brave Exvius.
There will be one day down the road, maybe I'll have like a day off on Tuesday. Eventually there has to be a day where we'll do a news day together. Eventually.
Indeed, people have definitely requested. You know, when are you getting Deus on your channel? And it's like, you know, the timing just didn't work out on Tuesday, but
yeah,
hopefully someday.
I'm hoping someday, and I'll definitely let you know on that.
All right, sounds great.
All right, I think we're done here. I think we've dragged this out long enough. If you watched all the way to the very end, make sure you hit the like button. I don't say that very often, but we did like an over an hour video, so yeah. Anyways, hope you guys learned a lot. I had a lot of fun, and I hope to see you in the next video. Hopefully we'll collab with Sinzar again soon.
See you then.